Hello YouTube and welcome back to another book review from me, your humble host, Logan Albright. And today I'm talking about the classic Siddhartha by Herman Hesse, originally written in German in 1922. I'm reading it in a new translation by Rika Lesser in this Barnes & Noble Classics paperback edition. Quite a short book. This is 117 pages in my edition here, so you can get through it pretty quickly. And I was interested in this because I have an interest in Eastern spirituality, Hinduism, Buddhism, meditation, that sort of thing. I think those are fascinating subjects. And I'm trying to read more like classics, like the novels that appear on all the like greatest 100 novels ever written lists. I've gone through a few of those recently and I've discovered that I haven't read as many of them as I thought. And there's wide gaps in my literacy. And so I'm trying to get through a few of them that I can read easily. And I thought this one sounded interesting. And so I checked it out and I really enjoyed it. I liked it a lot. It has a quality that makes it feel like a fable or a fairy tale almost. It's almost like a morality tale. I feel like there's many lessons within the book, and I'll talk about a few of them. I'm sure there are many more that I'm missing. But it feels very wise, and it feels almost didactic in that you're being told this fable to learn a lesson. But it's also very enjoyable as a story. It's not like plot heavy, it's philosophical, and it's about Eastern spirituality, and it's about enlightenment, okay? So the main character is Siddhartha, which was the name of the Buddha, and so that's where the name comes from. And he is a young man who's the son of a Brahmin, an Indian Brahmin being the highest social class in their caste structure. And he decides he wants to become enlightened. And so he goes out into the world to seek his fortune. Although he's not seeking his fortune, he's seeking enlightenment. And the first thing he does is he joins a group of religious ascetics who live out in the forest and basically deny themselves everything in the hopes of, and meditate all the time in the hopes of achieving enlightenment. And he stays with them for a few years, and he concludes that, well, this is fine, and I'm learning a lot of skills. I'm learning how to fast. I'm learning how to meditate. I'm learning how to go without worldly pleasures. But there are people who have been here 50 years, and they're still not enlightened. So clearly this doesn't work. So he's with his friend, by the way, I should say. He's got a friend who accompanies with him on this journey. And then he goes to meet this guru, this Buddha, this teacher who has achieved enlightenment and is trying to teach it to others. And his friend is all gung-ho, and he's like, I'm going to sign up with this guy and become a student of him. Siddhartha is not impressed. He says, you can't teach enlightenment, you have to experience it. So then he goes out into the world and he starts to see the beauty of the material world, because kind of a key tenet of Buddhism and Hinduism is that the material world is illusory, and that it's when you achieve enlightenment, you don't see it the way that other people see it, and it's sort of a trick that is played on our simplistic minds. But he goes out into the world and he sees that the moon is beautiful and the river is beautiful and that there's joy in the world, and he starts to become enamored with the material world a little bit, and he meets a ferryman who teaches him some wise things, and he starts to live a more normal life, one might say. He gets a job with a merchant. He starts, earning some money. He falls in love. He has a son, and many years pass, decades pass, and he becomes rich, and he becomes I don't want to say corrupted, but he becomes infatuated with the material world, and he starts gambling, and he starts drinking, and he realizes he's strayed from his quest of enlightenment, and he has to get back to it. Goes back out into the world again, and he's he meets his son, who he's been away apart from for many years, and he's like, I want to spare my son the mistakes that I've made. I want to try to have him learn from my experience so that he doesn't have to do this. And eventually, he kind of gets to a place where he's satisfied and feels like he's gained the wisdom that he wants to get. But I feel like the moral of the story, and there are several, but I feel like the main moral of the story is that wisdom is an ongoing, lifelong process, and that you can't just achieve it in a year or two. There's no end to it. You can't ever say, I'm finished gaining wisdom. You have to keep going your whole life and keep learning more and keep discovering more. And it's sort of the purpose of life, is to become enlightened and to attain wisdom. And you can't just do it like Siddhartha says. You can't be taught it. You can't do it through lessons or through books or through reading. And you have to go out into the world and make your mistakes. And the only way to learn is through experience. And experience is not only the best teacher, but the only teacher. And then mistakes are a natural part of that. You have to, folly is sort of the road to wisdom lies through folly. You have to make mistakes and you have to do things wrong in order to learn that those things were wrong and to get back onto the right path. I think that's a big part of it. And then another part of it is the inability to pass on, to kind of what's the word I'm looking for? You can't be a surrogate enlightenment person for someone else. You can't pass that knowledge on to someone else like your children. You can't spare them their mistakes. You can't spare them the folly of the world, because everyone has to experience it for themselves. And no matter how hard you try to teach your children and teach them, this is the right way to be, this is the wrong way to be, don't make these mistakes, do this right. There's always things that they're going to have to learn for themselves through experience, and they're not just going to get it by listening to you. And you have to go out and do that, do the work, put in the work. That's, I think, a big part of it. And I'm sure there's a lot more in there that I'm missing as well. But I found for such a short text, it had a lot to think about. It had a lot of wisdom. There's this whole tension between like the spiritual world and the material world, and which one should you spend your time in? Should you spend your time meditating and trying to detach yourself from material things? They teach in Buddhism that attachment is the root of suffering, and that in order to eliminate suffering, you have to not be attached to anything, really. Material possessions, friends, family, job, money, worldly pleasures, women, you can't be attached to any of that. You have to be detached, and that's where you get your alleviation from suffering from. Is that right? Or is it right to go out and live your life as a material person who enjoys food and drink and love and family and things like that? Is that the way to do it? It seems like those both have things to recommend them, and it seems like Siddhartha in the book is finding merit in both of those approaches, but not one to the exclusion of all others. So I think it's a complicated text for something that's so short, and it's something I could read again and I could think about some more. I'm not myself a Buddhist or a Hindu, although I find those philosophies appealing in certain aspects. I don't find them appealing in all their aspects. But I think there is great wisdom to be gained from those philosophies. I've been reading some of the Upanishads from Hinduism, which I find beautiful and really love. So I recommend those if people haven't read them. And I recommend Siddhartha if you haven't read it, because you can read it very quickly, and it's got a lot to think about. It's not just a story, it's a fable, it's a fairy tale, it's a morality play. It's all of these things wrapped up into one. I don't know much about Herman Hesse, the author. I know that he was German, but I don't know how he was familiar with these ideas. This 1922, there would have been, I guess these ideas started to penetrate Europe in the 19th century, but I don't know if he was himself considered part of these religions, or if he just heard about them secondhand, or if he went and lived in the East and learned about them then. Someone can tell me in the comments. I'm not really sure. But I thought it was a delightful book, and I'm glad I read it. I might read more of his books. I know he also wrote Steppenwolf, which I only know from the band name. It's an okay band. Some of their songs are good. But I'd be interested to know in the comments if you guys like Herman Hesse, and if I should read other of his books, and if you liked Siddhartha, and if you got anything out of it, and if you have anything you want to share about it that I didn't go over in this video, because I'm sure, like I said, it's a pretty deep book, and I'm sure I'm missing a lot of it. But do you agree with my interpretation or not? And if you enjoyed this review, please feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, leave comments down below, and come back each and every week for another book review, because I'll have another one for you next week. I'm trying to plow through my to-be-read stack and get more things, and it's going to be a variety of genres. I have a few more classics I want to get to. I have a couple modern things I want to get to, and I'm sure you'll be, no matter what your taste in literature, you will find something to enjoy there. So come back next week, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you later.